The world is holding its breath. The Taiwan Strait, a narrow strip of water separating China and Taiwan, has suddenly become the stage for one of the most dangerous standoffs in modern history. What began years ago as a war of tariffs, technology bans, and sanctions between the United States and China has now edged dangerously close to the possibility of open conflict. For decades, people have talked about the China-US rivalry as if it were mostly an economic competition. But now, after the events of March 2025, that rivalry feels less like a boardroom battle over trade and more like a potential spark for war. And the question hanging in the air is this: how close are we to crossing a line that cannot be uncrossed? Before we dive deeper into this story of warnings, military buildups, and global consequences, let me pause for a quick favor. If you find this kind of analysis valuable, please hit the like button and share this video with others who want to better understand the world we live in. It really helps more people discover content like this. Now, let's get into the heart of the crisis. On March 14, 2025, Beijing's foreign ministry issued a message that was impossible to ignore. In unusually blunt language, China warned the United States to stop its provocative actions in the Taiwan Strait, or face firm and decisive countermeasures. This wasn't the careful diplomacy of the past. It was a direct statement. China's patience had run out. The trigger? Two specific U.S. moves. First, a high-profile visit by American officials to Taipei, which Beijing saw as a violation of its One China principle. And second, a U.S. naval fleet sailing through the Taiwan Strait, something Washington describes as freedom of navigation, but China interprets as a deliberate challenge to its sovereignty. To some observers, this warning sounded eerily like déjà vu, the closest comparison being the 1996 Taiwan Strait crisis. But here's the difference. In 1996, China's military was far less advanced. Today, in 2025, Beijing commands one of the most formidable militaries on the planet. That changes everything. To understand why Taiwan is the most explosive flashpoint between the two superpowers, we need to revisit the history. The United States and China normalized relations in 1972 with Nixon's famous visit to Beijing. Out of that came the One China policy, which recognized Beijing as the legitimate government of China, while still leaving room for unofficial relations with Taiwan. It was an ambiguous compromise, a deliberate gray area that kept the peace. But ambiguity doesn't last forever. As China's economic and military power surged, hopes for gradual political convergence with the West faded. Instead, China became more assertive. The United States, meanwhile, doubled down on its support for Taiwan through arms sales, official visits, and public commitments under the Taiwan Relations Act of 1979. For Beijing, Taiwan isn't just a piece of territory. It's about legitimacy, sovereignty, and the Communist Party's promise of national rejuvenation. For Washington, Taiwan represents democracy under threat, a strategic partner in Asia, and a critical part of keeping balance in the region. Neither side can easily back down. This leads us to what happened next. The military buildup. Satellite images in the weeks after Beijing's warning showed China moving amphibious ships, missile brigades, and fighter jets into position along its southeastern coast. These weren't just drills. They were rehearsals, carefully timed to make the world pay attention. The U.S. responded by sending another carrier strike group into the region. Washington insists it's not trying to provoke conflict, only to deter it. But let's be honest. When both militaries are operating side by side, bristling with weapons and tension, the risk of miscalculation skyrockets, and the stakes go far beyond Taiwan itself. Over half of the world's container ships pass through the Taiwan Strait each year. A conflict there wouldn't just hit the headlines, it would hit your wallet, your job, and your daily life. Consider semiconductors. Taiwan is home to TSMC, the world's most advanced chip maker. Those tiny chips are in everything from smartphones to medical devices to fighter jets. If that supply chain breaks, we don't just face shortages, we face a global economic shock. That brings us to the other battlefield, economics. In early 2025, China imposed sweeping sanctions on American tech firms and restricted access to rare earth minerals, the very materials essential for electronics and weapons systems. The US hit back by blacklisting major Chinese AI companies. The result? A dangerous spiral of tit-for-tat retaliation that edges both economies toward decoupling. And then came the thunderclap. Former President Donald Trump, now once again a central figure in U.S. politics, called for a 245% tariff on all Chinese imports. Essentially, that would slam the door on Chinese goods entering the U.S. market. Beijing called it economic aggression and vowed retaliation. Analysts warned of millions of lost jobs on both sides and an accelerated global split into two rival economic systems. Now, at this point, I'd love to hear your perspective. Do you think the U.S. should stand firm on Taiwan, even at the risk of war? Or should Washington scale back and avoid confrontation? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm genuinely curious to see where you stand. Meanwhile, the rest of the world isn't just sitting on the sidelines. Europe urges restraint, Japan and South Korea quietly prepare, India faces pressure to choose a side, and Russia voices open support for China. NATO has called for de-escalation, but let's be real. This crisis is reshaping alliances. We're seeing the early contours of what many call a new Cold War. So where could all this lead? There are three main scenarios. Scenario 1, diplomacy. Perhaps back-channel negotiations through Switzerland or the UN cool things down. Both sides save face, the militaries step back, and sanctions are relaxed. The crisis fades, at least temporarily. Scenario 2, decoupling. The US and China don't go to war, but they pull apart economically. Supply chains split, trade barriers harden, and the world slows down. It's costly, painful, and possibly permanent. Scenario 3, conflict. A single misstep, a missile, a cyber attack, an accidental collision, sparks a skirmish that spirals into full-blown war. Cyber attacks cripple cities, satellites are destroyed, aircraft carriers burn, and the global economy collapses. It's the nightmare scenario, and no one escapes unscathed. What makes this so concerning is that while leaders play geopolitical chess, ordinary people pay the price. Workers lose jobs, families face higher prices, and savings shrink as markets tumble. The costs of this rivalry are already being felt, and they'll only grow if escalation continues. And technology, once a symbol of progress, has become a weapon in this battle. Taiwan's semiconductors are the crown jewel. Cyber warfare is the shadow battlefield, one where attacks can take down power grids, communication systems, or financial networks without a single shot fired. The world stands at a fragile balance point. Both Washington and Beijing are trying to deter each other, but deterrence and provocation can look awfully similar. In this environment, a single miscalculation could trigger disaster. And here's the sobering truth. The choices being made right now won't just shape the next few years, they'll echo across generations. The US-China standoff is not simply about superpowers flexing muscles. It's about the future of international order, the health of the global economy, and the kind of world our children and grandchildren will inherit. So, as we close, let me leave you with this. The world is watching, waiting, and hoping that reason prevails over conflict. The Taiwan Strait may look like a faraway strip of water, but what happens there touches us all. If you found this deep dive valuable, please take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the notification bell so you won't miss future analyses. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.